Hello everyone. We have finally launched the fifth issue of the Fetologue, which is dedicated to NIPT. Uh, I do believe that it is a very useful resource, but it is slightly difficult. So I thought I would take everyone who might be interested through it to give us a better idea. So this is an initiative of the FGI Research Institute, which was the brainchild of Dr. Pratima Radhakrishnan, who was my teacher in BFMC. And the first page gives us the details of the contributors, with me and Dr. Supriya being the editors under her leadership. So let's come to the first page of the Fetologue. Let's start with the first line. So this is basically because we know that screening for common autosomal trisomies is now a routine practice. And we know that the most common screening method that we use is the combined first trimester screening, which is the ultrasound with the biochemistry. Now, more and more of us are prescribing NIPT. We know NIPT. We are being directly marketed NIPT. But it is important to understand which are the scenarios in which it is very useful to us, which are the scenarios in which we might land up in trouble, and more importantly, so that the patients know what to expect and what not to. And so even though it is difficult, there is no option. If we are writing the test, we have to know all the details that are available here for us. So who needs to know? The clinician who is prescribing or looking after, even the person who is doing the ultrasound, and of course the genetic consultant who might or might not be directly involved in the test directly. So NIPT, now there are different terminologies going on. That is why we've put the synonyms. NIPT is also known as non-invasive prenatal testing. It is more accurately called as cell-free DNA testing, because that is what we that is what we actually test. So cell-free DNA is a term recommended by ISWOG, FMF, and SMFM, and that is a test terminology which we're using for the rest of the newsletter. With PNDT being so important for us, Form F and Form G must be documented for cfDNA testing. There was some controversy regarding it, saying we should only document maybe Form G. What is the need for Form F if you're not doing the scan in your center? But lawyers who have consulted with and looked at PNDT say that you should fill a Form F. Which one you need to tick? You definitely can take the NT scan, and if you have that NT scan report, you can just sort of add that there. Instead of ticking anything, just add the report, whichever might be available, and fill the Form G for sure. So the maternal blood, right? So what are we testing essentially? We are testing the maternal blood. We are drawing 8 to 10 cc in a K3 EDTA vial, so it's a different vial. And it should be processed within 36 hours after collection. So this is important for people who have collection centers but send it to labs which are away. What does this maternal blood have? The maternal blood has the maternal cell-free DNA and it has the fetoplacental cell-free DNA. Why do we call this the fetoplacental cell-free DNA? Because it is actually derived from the trophoblast and not directly from the fetus. So it is basically the placental. Until when does this remain? So it is a very high output thing. So until the fetus is there, you will actually keep getting the cell-free DNA in the maternal blood. But the moment the baby delivers, within 16 minutes to 2 hours and maximum 2 days, there is no cell-free DNA. So you know that it is basically coming into the bloodstream and being taken out very rapidly. So now we know that the blood has the maternal as well as the fetal placental. One of the key concepts to understand is the fetal fraction. If you see the NIPT report, every NIPT report does mention a fetal fraction. What is the fetal fraction? It is the proportion of fetoplacental cell-free DNA to the entire cell-free DNA, that is the maternal plus fetoplacental in the plasma. And so it is expressed as percentage. So we know that the minimum threshold required is 4%, because if you have less than 4%, then you will not get a result on cell-free DNA testing, because the false negative rates are too high. You just don't have enough fetal material to be able to comment properly. Ideally, what we say from experience is between 4 to 8 also. It is fine. That is what most studies tell us. But if it's more than 8, the likelihood ratios are very good and the accuracy of the test is absolutely very good. This is from personal experience and some papers, but not. But you have to know that less than 4%, you cannot even consider the report. More than 4%, you go ahead and consider the report, right? So cell-free DNA is very central. It has to be minimum 4%. And what is it? It is the cell-free DNA plasma में होता ही है उसका percentage of the fetal DNA. So next page tells us about advocating cell-free DNA test. So what should we do before advocating the test? When should it be done? And later on, we will see who should be offered. So the first essential thing that we need to remember is that a detailed ultrasound is mandatory before advising the cell-free DNA test. Right? You have to have accurate dating. You have to know whether it is a single pregnancy or a multiple pregnancy and whether it is viable or not. We've had cases where the sample has been sent and then the patient has come to us and it's a miscarriage, and it just doesn't make sense to have done that, right? Then we also need to ideally know the fetal anatomy and aneuploidy markers. So then when is the ideal time to offer it? After or along with your NT scan if it needs to be done. Technically, it can be offered as early as 10 weeks, but the problems are that only, that you will not get a detailed structural anatomy of the fetus. And if at all you send and then you see either a heart defect or a big omphalocele or a spinal defect, which you've not noted earlier, then you're in trouble needlessly. And there's no upper limit. It can be done throughout pregnancy, but in the later ones, you have to know what is the turnover time. For example, patient comes to you just 1 or 2 days less than 24 weeks or just 1 week before. What will you gain? Because it is going to take 2 weeks for the report to come. So the next line tells you that the turnaround time of result, further management is in case of positive or no result has to be considered when you're prescribing it later in pregnancy. And detection rate of fetal structural abnormalities in the NT scan is better when it is compared to earlier. So those are the reasons. The next section tells us that pre-test counseling is absolutely essential and covers the points which have to be told to the patient before the blood sample is drawn. So you have to tell them that it is a screening test, it is not diagnostic. If you get it, you will have to confirm by an invasive testing. It does not test for all genetic syndromes. The likely occurrence of no result, false positive, false negative, along with the detection rates. You can go through that. Equally important, the next section deals with cell-free DNA and when it should not be recommended.